Flat earthers have a huge problem. They have to reject thousands of photos and videos of the spherical Earth taken from space. If even one of them is real, their whole flat Earth belief system falls apart. So they have no choice but to claim that all space images are faked.
They are all clearly computer-generated images.
So all we have is fake pictures. Fake, super fake. All these are fake.
If you think this is real, there's something wrong with your brain.
It is a pure hoax. All of it.
And NASA's blue marble is a big hunk of poo-poo, and it's 100% debunked.
Than what you're going to see here with, NASA with these fake images.
Fake the pictures that they did of the Earth. How can I believe any of the Apollo programs? Well, the simple answer is I can't.
Notice how there is no objective criteria that flat earthers can consistently provide to determine whether the images are fake. They just assert that it looks fake to me, or you must be crazy to believe this. Some even call themselves skeptics, but this is not true skepticism. This is nothing but confirmation bias. True skeptics weigh the evidence fairly and consider its strength, quantity, and corroboration, regardless of whether it fits their preconceived conclusions. But not flat earthers. If it goes against their belief, it must be fake.
Period.
They also have a strange obsession with NASA, and they say that NASA cannot be trusted for a myriad of wacky conspiracy theory reasons. Do governments lie? Yes, of course they do. Do conspiracies exist? Yes. But you have to look at this possibility with evidence and reason. You have to consider all the facts involved. As of 2018, 72 different government space agencies are in existence. 14 of those have launch capabilities. 6 of those have launched satellites and probes into space. And 4 have launched humans into space. So you have to imagine that all these countries, not just the US, are together conspiring to fool the entire world. That strains credibility, to say the least, particularly when many of these countries are enemies. Think of how the former Soviet Union would have loved to have proved the United States was faking its space program, and vice versa. But that did not happen. But wait, there's more. Over 30 private non-government companies in multiple countries have built or are developing space launch vehicles, and 10 have built or are developing landers, rovers, or orbiters. I don't know why these companies would spend their own money to fool us. And then there are the hundreds of private contractor companies involved in building spacecraft for NASA and for the other government space agencies that employ hundreds of thousands of people, including members of my own family and people I know personally, I might add. And despite what flat earthers claim, NASA is quite transparent about where all that tax money they receive goes. You can go to usaspending.gov to search and download details of their contracts with these companies. Just do a keyword search for NASA. I often wonder how flat earthers imagine that such a huge conspiracy, involving hundreds of thousands of people over more than 70 years, could have remained a secret without a single credible whistleblower, and without a shred of damning evidence of the fakery. It boggles the mind. And how could this massive hoax have been passed down through the generations of people that have worked for the space agencies or their contractors over that time? Just imagine working hard for 8 years to achieve a PhD in astrophysics, and then landing your dream job at NASA, only to be told on your first day of work that you are actually going to be faking it, and you can't tell anybody. This idea is so laughable it wouldn't even be considered a good fiction story, And yet that is the kind of absurdity you must accept without question and without evidence to believe it is all a hoax. When the conspiracy needs to be this huge, it is far more absurd to believe it is fake than to believe it is real. When the amount of evidence is this extensive, and the number of organizations and individuals involved are this huge, and the time span is this long, a hand-waving dismissal of the evidence and a distrust of the source is not good enough. You have to make a convincing argument to show that it is all a hoax, that all of it must be fake, every bit of it. There is extensive photographic evidence of the space program going back to the very beginning, not just of space, but of the engineers building and testing the spacecraft, spacesuits, and support systems, and of the astronauts training and testing those systems. And these photos are all available online today, along with videos and live feeds readily available for anyone to examine. Some flat earthers actually say that there's only one photo of the whole Earth from space that exists. Nothing could be more wrong. They are just believing what some other flat earther said, without doing a single bit of their own research on the subject. The fact is that NASA and other space agencies actually post new images, video, time lapses, and live streams of Earth from space nearly every single day. I have provided an extensive list of these sources in the description. Some flat earthers also say that NASA admitted they fake all the photographs, but this is an absurd misconstruing of what has been said. In addition to photographs of Earth from space, NASA also produces some digital composited images of Earth, such as the blue marble images, and others, which are generated from many close-up images and other digital data, and then combined and digitally enhanced to show the Earth in great detail. But NASA is very clear that these are not photographs of the Earth. As I have noted before, the famous quote from Rob Simon,
"It is photoshopped, but it's has to be,"
was referring only to these types of images. Flat earthers dishonestly take that statement and others out of context and pretend he was talking about all space photographs. That is not the case. NASA is clear about which photos are composites or digital illustrations and which are true photographs. Flat earthers assert that every single space image is faked, either through CGI, which, by the way, did not exist in the early days of NASA, or by photographing a painting, or by some other means. But these people have failed to provide any objective criteria or technique we can use to determine if an image is fake. Some have tried and failed, like attempts to show that changing the contrast in the images reveals pixelated blocks around elements of an image that are supposed to be the result of copying and pasting. But this can easily be shown to be caused by image compression algorithms, not fakery. The vast majority of stored digital images are compressed, and these pixelated regions, revealed by adjusting the images, are nothing more than artifacts of the way that compression works. Others will cherry-pick some silly anomaly in a space photo or video, like supposed air bubbles, and claim this proves all of them are fake. That is absurd and will not nearly suffice. You could point out anomalies in just about any photo that is not easy to explain, but that proves nothing. You have to show how it all could have been faked, from the very first photograph of Earth taken in space in 1946 to the many that were uploaded or streamed on this very day. You have to provide a consistent way to determine it. Which leads me to the Photo Fakery Challenge. I have picked 12 photographs that I've taken myself, and I made a small alteration to just one of them, using photo editing software. Your challenge, should you choose to accept it, consists of 2 parts. The first part is to identify which photo is faked, and in what way, and more importantly, to explain the objective criteria or methodology you used to identify it. Just a guess is not good enough. And then, the second part of the challenge is to use the same objective methodology to prove any official space photograph is not real. My suggestion would be to use any Epic Discover image, which you can download in full resolution. But any space image will do, as long as you can provide a valid official source. All 12 of the challenge images are available at full resolution in JPEG format at the location linked in the description, so you can download them and analyze them any way you like. I chose images that I took myself to make sure you cannot find the original photo online anywhere else, and so I could be sure they were unaltered. They were taken with a good quality DSLR camera and stored as JPEGs originally when taken. Only one of the images is altered, and I will reveal which one in the future. The alteration is not huge, but it is not just a few pixels either. Many flat earthers claim it is easy to prove that space images are fake. If that is true, then you should have no problem finding my fakery and applying the same technique to space photographs. So here is your chance. I really don't know what will happen. I am no Photoshop expert. Maybe there is some software or technique that I'm not aware of that can easily find the fakery. We will see. Flat earthers keep claiming they can prove the fakery, but I have yet to see anything remotely convincing. Make your claims and provide your analysis in the comments. Or, better yet, make a video, to which I will happily provide a link in a pinned comment. My plan is to wait for 6 months or 50,000 views, whichever comes first, before I reveal the correct answer. I will upload the original unaltered photo at that time for comparison. So if you post the correct answer, sorry, but I will not acknowledge it right away, because I want to give many people a chance to try. When the answer is revealed, I will then acknowledge anyone that got it right. Check my pinned comment for any updates. Getting the answer right is only half the challenge. To make your case, you need to show how that same methodology can be applied successfully to space images, and how it clearly indicates that they are fake as well. But I want to be totally honest about this. If no one can meet my challenge, I am not claiming that it absolutely proves that all space photographs are real. Evidence doesn't work that way. I realize that NASA has far more capabilities and resources than I do, so if they were faking it, they would certainly be much more convincing than I could be. The conclusion that the Earth is a sphere is a scientific claim, and the burden of proof of that claim is on the scientists and those that accept and promote that claim. So I want to be clear that I am not shifting the burden of proof, as many proponents of all sorts of pseudoscientific claims tend to do. I am not saying, prove my evidence is fake or it must be real. But the burden of proof for the spherical Earth has been met for centuries, long before NASA or anyone else went to space, and the evidence is overwhelmingly strong. See my series, Proving the Earth is Not Flat, for many of the ways you can prove to yourself, with your own observations, that the Earth is a sphere, without space photographs. So I am not demanding that you accept the photographic evidence. Rather, my goal is to demonstrate that flat earthers reject mountains of photographic evidence without adequate justification out of nothing more than confirmation bias and incredulity, not out of fair and rational scientific analysis. And furthermore, they falsely claim that it has all already been proven false. This is not remotely true. This is the results video for the Photo Fakery Challenge. There has been an overwhelming response, so thanks to all for participating. I hope you found it fun. But as of this moment, no flat earther has successfully stepped up and answered the challenge. There were some correct answers and good analysis, as I will show in a moment. But as far as I have seen, they were all by people who accept the globe reality. And no flat earther even attempted the second part of the challenge, which is to use the same method or criteria to prove any space images are faked. To be fair, this doesn't prove space images are real. I understand my photo editing is not necessarily the same kind of CGI that would be used by NASA and others if they were faking space images. What it does show is that flat earthers cannot back up their claims of space fakery with actual objective analysis. All they have is a bunch of hand-waving dismissal, driven by confirmation bias and unsubstantiated conspiracy theories, and some very weak attempts to find problems with the images. Flat Earthers utterly fail to make a convincing case against the extremely strong and voluminous photographic evidence, just like they cannot debunk any of the many other ways we know the Earth is a sphere, as hard as they try. But a few globe Earthers did get the right answer, so let's get to the reveal. The fake photo is number 6. I added the rabbit to the photo to the left of the horses. Here is the original photo for comparison. The rabbit came from this picture I took elsewhere. I carefully copied and pasted the rabbit in, scaled it, added shadows, and smoothed out the transition. A few people correctly found the rabbit using good analysis. They spotted that the lighting on the rabbit came from the wrong direction, and that the shadow under the rabbit appeared to be faked, which it was, and that the resolution was different from the rest of the photo. Good job to those that got it. Credit goes to Chad Farrager and Andrzej Wojtowicz for being the first to get the correct answer, both in the first 24 hours. Andrzej didn't mention the image number and rabbit specifically, but based on his description, and a clever clue, what's Opera Doc is a Bugs Bunny cartoon, I am convinced he found it, and he provided a very good analysis of what gave it away. And here are some other correct answers. I'm sorry if I missed anyone. There were thousands of comments to go through. The incorrect answers were also very interesting. I purposely chose some photos that looked like they could be faked, and there are some lessons to be learned from the responses. A lot of people picked image 8 with the low-flying FedEx jet, pointing out that jets don't fly that low except for takeoff and landing, and the landing gear is not down. Well, that is of course correct, except that this photo was taken during the annual Huntington Beach Air Show, and the jet was doing a low flyby over the water. Here is someone else's video from that same event as corroboration. Sometimes a picture doesn't match our expectations, but our expectations can be wrong. That is a very important point. For example, I am often asked why you cannot see all the satellites in photos of Earth. But most satellites are only about the size of cars or buses, and there are only about 2,300 of them, not counting small space debris. Not tens of thousands as flat earthers often claim. And they are on many different trajectories and at a wide variety of heights, so they are all at least hundreds of miles away from each other. The Earth is really, really big, and the space around it is even bigger, so it is extremely unlikely you will see even one satellite in an image taken from a satellite or spacecraft, let alone many. Except for photos taken as satellites are being launched, such as these. Do you expect to be able to see a car or bus from hundreds of miles away? No, that's absurd. So why do you think you should be able to see the satellites? That expectation is just dead wrong. Also, some people pointed out image 9 seems to have a fake sky. That is because this photo is actually taken inside the Venetian Hotel in Las Vegas, and the sky is painted on a curved ceiling. And others thought the big ball in the elephant pic, number 7, looked fake. And I agree, it kind of looks fake and out of place. But it's real. The elephants at the San Diego Zoo were playing with it. Here is another photo I took on the same day. Sometimes real photos can look fake. Imagine that. Others saw a mysterious face in image 4. This picture was taken outside the Venetian Hotel in Las Vegas. It doesn't seem to make any sense for a big human face to be there. This is called an anomaly. Sometimes anomalies occur in photos that we cannot understand, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a logical explanation. In this case, the explanation is that there is a big sign on the wall. I think it is advertising a restaurant, and that is a picture of the chef. I found this other image online from a different angle, which corroborates my photo and helps explain the anomaly. But even when an anomaly is not easily explained, be careful not to jump to any conclusions. Many proponents of all sorts of pseudosciences fall into this trap of misidentifying anomalies, such as ghost hunters, ufologists, all sorts of cryptozoologists, or the supposed bubbles that flat earthers claim they see in space photographs. If you don't know what it is, you just don't know what it is. That is not an excuse to make things up. But as I showed, one way to investigate photographs is to look for corroborating evidence. For example, you can corroborate weather satellite images from space with those of other satellites, even those of different countries, and by seeing if the clouds match your own local weather, or weather reported widely elsewhere. It would have to be a massive coordinated effort to fake these weather patterns, including in time lapses that match the actual weather seen around the world. Since we are talking about space images, a few people asked me to explain the variation in the size of the continents seen in various pictures of the Earth. This is a common flat Earth attempt to debunk space photos, as seen in this very popular meme. The answer is simple. Satellites and spacecraft take photos at vastly different distances from Earth. The closer you are to Earth, the less of the sphere you can see. So in close images, the continents will appear bigger compared to the visible disk of the Earth. This is just how spheres work. It's basic geometry. For example, the GOES East satellite is about 22,000 miles, or 35,000 kilometers, from Earth. And the DISCOVER satellite is about 916,000 miles, or 1.4 million kilometers from Earth, which is over 40 times farther away. This explains why the continents appear bigger in the GOES photos in relation to the visible sphere of the Earth, because it is simply seeing much less of the Earth. The DISCOVER satellite is at such a great distance that it sees very nearly half the Earth. But the GOES is much closer, so it can see much less than half the Earth. Mick West already did an excellent job of explaining this on the Debunked website, so I thought I would just replicate his key experiment. As he demonstrates on a globe, the closer to Earth a photo is taken, the larger the continents will appear. I happen to have the exact same globe, so I replicated his results. And I also did it with video, so you can see the effect as it occurs. As I get closer, the continents look bigger in relation to the whole globe, as the sides of the globe gradually disappear from view around the curve. Here you can compare screenshots of the globe from far away and close up. And once again it demonstrates that distance makes a big difference in the apparent size of the continents. There are photos of the Earth taken from a huge variety of distances, so this easily explains why the continents appear to be different sizes. And also, look what I did with a wide-angle lens. It looks a lot like this image. Actually, this is a composite image, not a single-shot photo, as are some of the others dishonestly used by the flat earthers. But it doesn't matter, as you can see that the distance, focal length, and type of lens used can account for all these differences. So, yet another flat Earth claim doesn't size up, and falls apart upon reasoned examination, knowledge, and experiment. This time on Flat Earth Falsities, I'm going to let the pictures do the talking. I was inspired by the work done by a YouTuber named Soundly, who very dramatically demonstrated the curve of the Earth by capturing many still photos and videos of causeways and power lines across water. By looking down the length of these structures, which are built over water, the curvature of the Earth becomes readily apparent. Just like when you want to tell if a wooden beam or a cue stick is straight or bent, looking almost straight down its length will exaggerate any subtle curvature so that you can easily see it. The same thing works with straight structures built over water. Be sure to check out Soundly's channel for many examples, and expert explanations of why it works and how to film it yourself. I wanted to try to replicate it myself, but there are no causeways where I live in Southern California. There are, however, some very long breakwaters, such as this one in Long Beach. The section on the right runs due east and west for 2.5 miles, or about 4 kilometers, and is visible from the shore over here in Sunset Beach. So I set up my camera on a very clear day, right here, and tried to capture shots of the breakwater, right down its length. The start of the breakwater was about 3.3 miles, or 5.3 kilometers away, so I could barely see it from close to the waterline as it was just at the horizon. But higher up on the sand, about 20 feet or 6 meters, I got the perfect view. And, eureka! There is the curvature of the Earth, right there in my lens. You can clearly see curvature, not only at the top of the breakwater, but also at the waterline. Also, on this video clip I took, you can see a sailboat coming into the harbor. When I freeze it right here, this makes it clear where the end of that segment of the breakwater is. The remaining part of the breakwater, which extends on the other side and makes a bend to the south, was not visible from where I stood, as it was actually below the horizon. And this matches the curvature calculation at metabunk.org/curve. The opposite end of the breakwater segment, where the sailboat came through, is about 5.8 miles, or 9.3 kilometers from my position. So my view closely matches what is expected on a curved Earth. I welcome anyone to come try this yourself. I'll even join you if I can. You just need really clear seeing conditions. I was lucky on New Year's Day that there were strong westerly winds the night before, called the Santa Ana winds, which cleared out a lot of the smog and haze. Flat Earthers keep denying that you can see the curvature, and they keep making all sorts of excuses for the evidence we show them. But they repeatedly fail to make any reasonable counter-arguments, or in any way demonstrate their belief that the Earth is flat. It's not, and you can see the curve yourself, if you know how to look. This is just one of a number of ways you can see it. Also check out my video, Show Me the Curve, in which I showcase several examples of curved structures over water like this, plus examples of 3 other ways to see the curve directly. Many flat earthers try to use what they call atmospheric lensing to explain why boats or buildings appear hidden at the bottom by the horizon. This was popularized in a few videos by Rob Skiba, in which he did a few experiments with a magnifying glass and an image of a distant city, which appear to explain how a city can appear hidden at the bottom on a flat Earth. But, as always, there are flaws in his experiments and in his reasoning, as others have pointed out. I will explain why this supposed lensing effect, which I will call Skiba lensing, cannot explain the consistent phenomenon of boats, buildings, mountains, or other things being hidden at the bottom at the horizon. Light does bend in Earth's atmosphere, which is called refraction. And you could even say it acts like a lens, sort of. But it does not work the way Skiba claims it does. let's talk about how light refraction actually works. Light refraction occurs when light goes through substances of different densities. When light passes from a less dense substance to a more dense substance, or vice versa, the light is refracted. That is to say, it bends. The direction of the bend is always toward the denser layer, as shown in this simulator created by the University of Colorado at Boulder. The bending occurs because light travels more slowly in a denser medium. So as it hits a density layer at an angle, the side of the beam on the denser side slows down first, causing the beam to bend toward the higher density. The greater the variation of density, the more the light is bent, as you can see here as I increase the density of the lower material in the simulator. A classic experiment you can do to see this is a pencil and a glass of water. At the interface of the air and the water, the pencil appears broken and shifted. This is because the light coming through the water and transitioning into the air is shifted by the density difference of the two media, while the light from the top of the pencil only travels through the air directly to your eye. The direction of this shifting is always the same. The light bends toward the denser material. More specifically, when going from less dense to more dense at an angle, the light bends toward the normal line, which is an imaginary line perpendicular to the boundary of the two substances. And when going from more dense to less dense, it bends away from the normal line. But the easier way to think about this is that it always bends toward the denser material. So since Earth's atmosphere is densest at the surface, due to the weight of the air above pushing down on the air below, light traveling through the atmosphere is normally going to bend slightly downward. And furthermore, when there is a temperature gradient, such as that caused by cold water cooling the air above it, this will increase the air density gradient, since cold air is more dense than warmer air, and therefore we see even more refraction over cold water. And unlike the water-to-air transition, which bends the light abruptly, the atmospheric density gradient is gradual, so the light bends slightly and gradually, which forms a curved shape. Now here comes the part that is counterintuitive. The light rays are bending down, but this makes things actually appear higher than they are, not lower. Think about it. The light is bending down toward the Earth. So when we look at that light, it looks like it's coming from a higher point than it is. So it appears higher above the horizon than it is. We see it from the direction it hits our eye or our camera, not from a direct line of sight, when refraction is in effect. In fact, we actually typically see the sun rise a few seconds before the sun is actually above the horizon. This effect can be seen when the sun appears oblate. That is, it looks squished top to bottom at sunrise or sunset. The light from the sun is traveling through the atmosphere at a shallow angle, and bending down as it travels through different density layers. And so, the light from the bottom of the sun is going through denser air than the light from the top of the sun. So the bottom light rays bend more than the top light rays, causing the oblateness effect. All the light appears to be shifted up to the observer, but the bottom appears shifted up more than the top is. Rob Skiba and other flat earthers are making several mistakes in their Skiba lensing claims. But the biggest mistake is the direction of the effect. It does not make things appear lower. It makes them appear higher. It is true that the atmosphere works like a lens, but not the kind of lens Skiba is using in his experiment, and not in the way he uses it. He uses a convex magnifying lens, which bends light away from the center, making objects appear bigger in all directions. As others have pointed out, if the atmosphere worked like that, you would see distortion in every direction, and the distortion would change as you changed your position in relation to the object. We don't see that. What we do see is refraction in a vertical direction, caused by the vertical density gradient of Earth's atmosphere. And this is why refraction can explain why distant cities can sometimes be seen farther than expected on a curved Earth. The refraction bends the light around the curve. When light travels at a shallow angle through a density gradient with the denser material at the bottom, it will always bend down, making objects appear higher. There is a very interesting video showing how this refraction can vary over the course of a few hours as the temperature changes. What this video shows is that the amount of refraction can vary with the density gradient, and the density gradient is affected by the temperature gradient. When looking at things through Earth's atmosphere near the surface, light is usually going to bend down, which makes them look higher, unless there is a layer of warm air at the surface with colder air above, often seen over a hot road or hot desert sand. This is called an inferior mirage, and it often appears as glassy water below the horizon, or it can also create a mirroring effect above the horizon. Inferior mirages tend to be less stable, giving them a wavering appearance, as hot air will rise and mix with the colder air descending. A superior mirage, or looming, tends to be more stable. Skiba wants us to believe that distant objects can appear hidden at the bottom because of the Skiba lensing effect. He thinks that the light from the bottom of the objects is essentially disappearing into the surface of the Earth. As I've shown, the light is bending the wrong way to do that. But even if he was right, even if atmospheric refraction did make objects appear lower, there is still one big problem that ends that claim once and for all. Images like this one, with two different boats at different distances, both hidden at the bottom, but at the same horizon line. This cannot be due to refraction. This requires a curved surface. In order for this to be caused by Skiba lensing, there has to be some reason that the light from objects at different distances dives down into the surface at the same line. What in the world would cause that? And furthermore, what is happening to the light from the water behind the boat? When a boat is seen in front of the real horizon, we see the water behind it. So if the atmosphere is bending the image of the boat down, as he claims, it would also have to be bending the image of the water down behind it. So what we would see is something like this. We would see boats appearing to sink into the water with the water visible behind it. Instead, we only see sky or distant mountains behind the horizon. This is also obvious when a distant boat is seen behind the horizon in front of a landmass. The boat and the landmass will always share the same horizon line. I took this footage myself from the shore in Seal Beach, from about 6 feet above the water, with Catalina in the background. At that height, the horizon is just 3 miles away, or about 4.8 kilometers away. You can see multiple objects at different distances, all sharing the same horizon. Here we see 2 oil drilling platforms at different distances, both partially hidden at the bottom behind the horizon. Notice how you cannot see their legs. Here is a boat just at the horizon, but notice another oil rig in the distance behind it. Then we get to another oil rig, which is called Platform Esther, which is just 1.4 miles or 2.3 kilometers away. So this one is in front of the horizon, as expected. And here we get to a big ship, just a bit past the horizon, with Catalina Island in the distance. Catalina Island is 28.7 miles or 46.2 kilometers away. Again, notice how the ship and Catalina disappear into the same horizon. Why can't we see the water in between? And then we see a distant sailboat missing its hull, and then another ship, all behind the same horizon line. This one panorama ends the Skiba lensing claim once and for all. They are trying to invent some magical lensing effect which can bend all the light from different sources at different distances right at the same line. This simply cannot work. Light does not do that. There is no form of refraction that can cause that. The shared horizon line must be caused by the curvature of the Earth. In one of Skiba's flawed experiments, he actually created a fake horizon by using the edge of a table. But there is simply no reason there would ever be a horizon in front of anything on a flat Earth. The horizon would always be very distant, the vertical vanishing point where the ground meets the sky. Even if Skiba lensing is shifting things down, it would shift everything down, not just the boats or buildings, and not at the same arbitrary line in front of the objects. There is no reason Skiba lensing would create a horizon line at all, behind which the boats and oil rigs and buildings disappear, and especially objects at different distances disappearing at the same line, as I observed. No, that absolutely cannot be correct. The only explanation for objects hidden at the bottom at the horizon line is the curvature of the Earth. Skiba lensing does not work. It's just another desperate attempt to explain away evidence for the curved Earth.
This is a lot harder than I expected, proving that the Earth is round.
I came across this guy on YouTube who says he's not a flat earther, but he is not sure why. His name is Owen Benjamin, and he is a comedian, comic actor, and musician. In this epic meltdown you're about to see, he becomes very frustrated that, with his severely limited scientific knowledge, he cannot prove that the Earth is a sphere. So, let's see if we can help him out.
This is the thing I want to ask the round Earth people to explain to me. If the Earth is spinning at 700 miles an hour, 1100 miles an hour, whatever, why isn't the air spinning? And before you answer real fast and say, oh, it's all relative, the higher you go in the air, the less atmosphere there is until there's almost no atmosphere. Like 40,000 feet up, there's almost no atmosphere. So where is the break where you get away from the atmosphere in which it's no longer relative? So if the Earth is spinning 1,100 miles an hour and the atmosphere somehow miraculously is attached to the Earth, is that what kind of friction is that? Sliding friction is when the molecules are touching, so sliding friction is moving it along, right? Fine.
Yes, air has friction. He has the answer right there. The atmosphere is held to the Earth by gravity, and that causes air pressure, which causes friction against the surface, and friction of the air against the air. So, the rotation of the Earth has to cause the atmosphere to rotate with it, all the way up to the edge of space. Here is an illustration that would help him understand. The water in this blender is pushed around by the blades at the bottom, but all of the water spins, all the way up to the top, due to the friction of the water against the water. Air pressure is less dense and has less pressure, so the friction is less, but it is still a factor, so the same effect occurs.
When you go up enough, there's no more atmosphere. So you are now just, like if you're in a hot air balloon that goes up 30,000 miles, there's no atmosphere. So why isn't the Earth flying by? We have molecules of the atmosphere, and if it's attached, fine. You go up 40,000 feet, there's no atmosphere, none. It's basically a vacuum. So where do you pop out of that situation? The jet stream, that's 100 miles an hour, not 1,100. And when you're out of the atmosphere, when you're going west to east or east to west, I can't remember which way, why is the Earth not flying by?
No. Wow. Hot air balloons cannot go above the atmosphere. They rise due to buoyancy, which requires the atmosphere. A hot air balloon is less dense than the air around it, so the gravity pulls on the air around it a little bit stronger, and this forces the balloon up. And so, since the balloon is still floating within the atmosphere, and as we know, the atmosphere rotates with the Earth, you are not going to see the Earth zip by below from a hot air balloon, except for movement that's caused by the wind.
Here's another one. Why do flights not go around the poles? Please explain this to me, because I do not like where the logic is taking any of this. It's not fun. It's actually incredibly isolating, and I don't want it at all.
Oh, the poor guy. They say ignorance is bliss. Apparently not for Owen. Flights do go around the poles, sometimes. People have circumnavigated the entire Earth, north to south, several times. In 1977, Pan Am Flight 50 was the first commercial airliner to accomplish the feat. The flight took 54 hours and cost passengers $2,222 US. But this was done as a publicity stunt. There is no practical reason to fly over both poles. The Guinness Book of Records records the first polar circumnavigation done on the surface by land and sea, which took 3 years, from 1979 to 1982, by Sir Ranulph Fiennes and Charles Burton, which was known as the Transglobe Expedition, and it was a tremendously difficult and dangerous accomplishment. Today, airliners routinely fly over the North Pole, or close to it, for certain routes between Asia and North America because it is the most direct path. But in the Southern Hemisphere, there just happens to be only 3 major landmasses that are spaced somewhat evenly around the pole. So there simply is no practical reason to fly over the South Pole, as there are no 2 populated areas that are exactly opposite each other across the pole. Rather, intercontinental flights in the Southern Hemisphere arc down towards Antarctica and then arc back up, such as Qantas 27 from Sydney, Australia to Santiago, Chile.
The last thing I need in my life is to be given another label that makes me look insane. That sounds awful. Someone said not flat. Well, please tell me how you can go up into near-Earth orbit and stay still and the Earth is not flying by if it's spinning on an axis. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't explain it, can you?
Yes, I can. Okay, so now he is talking about satellites, not planes or balloons. The majority of satellites orbit west to east, the same direction that the Earth rotates. They do go faster than the Earth's rotation, so the Earth does zip by underneath them. I really don't understand what his issue is. The International Space Station, for example, travels at about 17,000 miles per hour, or 27,000 kilometers per hour, and you can see the Earth moving by below it. But it is about 250 miles, or about 400 kilometers above the surface. At that height, the relative movement of the Earth appears to move very slowly. Anyone who has watched cars appear to slowly creep along a highway from a high airplane understands that since distances look smaller when far away, speeds appear slower. Some satellites are positioned above the equator at a height and speed that causes them to move at the same rate as the Earth's rotation. These are called geosynchronous satellites. So you won't see any of the Earth's rotation from their perspective, and that's by design.
Explain to me how NASA shows us images of the Earth that are photoshopped. The clouds are duplicates of the other clouds in the thing.
There are only 1 or 2 examples of cloud formations being duplicated in Earth photographs that I know of. And these are in composite images that were never claimed to be real single-image photographs. There are, however, tens of thousands of images of Earth that don't have any evidence of photoshopping. So this is a case of extreme cherry-picking and a misconstruing of the evidence.
Coriolis effect proves the Earth isn't flat. I believe that as well. I really hope we have more than the Coriolis effect. Really hope we have more than that, guys. Really hope we have more than the Coriolis effect.
Indeed, we do. In my video called Atmospheric Lensing Debunked, I pointed out that objects at different distances beyond the horizon all disappear at the bottom at the same horizon line. This observation clearly debunks any flat Earth excuses that the horizon effect is caused by any form of refraction or any made-up form of flurspective. It only makes sense that the universal observation that objects become hidden by the horizon is caused by the curve of the Earth. You can further demonstrate this fact by increasing your elevation. If the Earth is curved, elevation will move the horizon farther away and reveal more of the Earth's curved surface. So, I flew my drone straight up, near the same location in Seal Beach, looking at some ships and Catalina in the distance, and it shows exactly what you would expect from a curved Earth. At near ground level, these two ships, and Catalina behind them, disappear into the same horizon, and all the water in between them is hidden behind the curve. But the higher you go, the farther away the horizon gets, so you can see more and more of the water behind the ships. My drone was fighting some strong winds, so it bobbled a bit, and I edited some of that out. I'll be happy to provide the raw, uncut footage if anyone doubts that this is real. Also, my drone camera has a wide-angle lens, which makes distant objects appear smaller. So I zoomed in somewhat digitally so you can more clearly see the boats, and the island, and the water in between as it rises. By the way, you can see that the water changed color dramatically at a line visible here. This is apparently due to the depth dropping off rather suddenly, as you can see in this topographical map. So don't confuse that line with the horizon. When I reach my peak height of about 250 feet, or 76 meters, you can clearly see water in between the ships and the island that was not visible near ground level. This is exactly what we expect from a curved Earth, as illustrated in this animation, which of course is not to scale. The higher you go, the farther away the horizon gets, as indicated by the vertical line at the bottom. The light blue region represents what you can see above the horizon. As you climb, the distance to the horizon increases, and your angle of view over it also increases, so you can see more and more of the water beyond the ships the higher you go. Catalina is about 28 miles or 45 kilometers away, so at my maximum height of 250 feet, I still was not able to see the island down to the waterline. At that height, the horizon is about 19 miles or 31 kilometers away, so the shoreline of Catalina is still hidden behind the curve at that height. To see the shoreline, you would have to climb to about 500 feet or 152 meters. If the Earth was flat, you could see all the way to the shoreline with a sufficient zoom in clear conditions, even at low heights. As I pointed out before, there is no reason that the boats and the distant island behind it would appear to share the same horizon line at low heights. You should always be able to see the water extend all the way to the opposite shore, but that is never what we see. Increasing your elevation is another way to demonstrate visually and directly that the surface of the Earth is curved. No flat Earth attempts to explain this observation remotely work. I challenge any flat earther to do this type of observation and explain the results.